Welcome, welcome, welcome. Whether you're watching this live or you are watching it on the recording, I'm so happy that you're tuning in. The gentleman that I am bringing you today is an amazing alumni of A. Philip Randolph Campus High School and the SBI program. He is gone into the financial industry hard, taking no prisoners. He's somebody that I respect a lot. He's come back. He's contributed to the board for SBI. He is somebody that works in his community, strong in the church, somebody that I think you're really going to like to meet. Innis Baah is going to be on with us today. I'm going to get into our theme music, and then I will bring him in, so stay tuned. We got quite a show for you today. I appreciate you for being here.
Wow. Thank you.
Hold on one second, Innis. I got some theme music that doesn't always start up the right way, so I think you'll like the song, though. It'll bring back some memories because we've incorporated some stuff in here.
This is the Alumni Connections Project. We all know Randolph is better than the rest. Even when you progress, you still gotta rep. A. Philip Randolph Campus High School. But this is not a test, you should say it with your chest. Be proud of your origin, and if you are proud, support it then. Stronger together through unity, better together. Let's build the community. Randolph isn't a school or a building, it's a legacy. It's not in your past, it's your identity. So show some pride. Alumni Connections is sponsored and brought to you by SBI, CCPI. SoundDownBusiness.org. SoundDownBusiness.org. The journey doesn't end with graduation and prom. The journey doesn't end with graduation and prom. The journey doesn't end with the journey doesn't end. This is the Alumni Connections Project. This is the Alumni Connections Project. A. Philip Randolph. Randolph. A. Philip Randolph. 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 Randolph.
Wow. Wow.
Does that bring back some memories?
That's amazing. That's amazing. That is awesome.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Innis Baah coming to you. I can't wait to really get into your story. I've been tracking you, talking to you for many years now. It's such a joy to have you on the show. So what I'd like you to do is say hello to everybody. Tell everybody where you're currently working, what you're currently doing, family situation, where you're living. Give everybody sort of a nice contextual piece of what's going on in the world of Mr. Innis Baah. You'll see that Innis has his COVID beard in full effect. I was surprised because I'm used to him being baby butt food.
This is temporary. Yeah. But Carrie, thanks again for inviting me to this podcast. I've seen a couple episodes, and quite frankly, I'm very impressed and want to learn about what motivated you to start this, right? So I think it's an excellent platform for alumni to jump on, for each of us to learn about our separate career tracks and what we're doing, and just leverage the huge alumni network that SBI has and Randolph as a community.
You just answered the question, man. That's why I'm trying to bring the alumni together and have folks, whether they're recent graduate like Brian Ortiz, who I had on the show yesterday, or there's somebody like Tulani Thomas, who is had like basically a couple careers at this point. Right. Somebody who is a professional lawyer, Black woman out in the community. She's writing children's books, has an amazing amount of experience where she can help you. She can help somebody that's currently going to Randolph. You can help maybe her with some other things on the financial end. Give Brian a leg in. Connect with Jeremy Jaiko, who has been a part of 3 tech startups. He was at Peloton, and he brought Evan Johnson, another alumni, into Peloton. We have so many powerful, amazing, super intelligent alumni that are doing amazing things. So that's the whole thing. You answered that question right there, just bringing them together. So enough about this show. Hopefully folks are subscribing, hitting that bell, shameless plug, get it in so that we can bring attention to this, and so you can see alumni as they're being uploaded to the channel. But let's get into Innis Baah and what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, currently I am a senior consultant at a firm called Ernst Young. Ernst Young is a professional service firm that mainly focuses on audit, advisory, consulting, and tax. I work for what was the legacy advisory practice, and I'm now within their consulting wing. I started my career. I was about to say I started my career at Deloitte, but that wouldn't be true. Started my career in public service about 10 years ago, working for the New York State Senate. Spent some time there. It was very fruitful. Have wonderful memories. But after that time, or who the senator I was working for decided not to contest his position due to other circumstances, I decided to look into finance and business in general. And that led me to a path of working for Initiative Media at the time and getting into traditional consulting and starting at Deloitte, which is what I consider the official start of my professional career, and spent 5 years working within Deloitte's financial services industry. And then 2 years ago, made the switch from Deloitte to Ernst Young, working for the real estate advisory practice. So in a nutshell, that's been my track so far.
And really quick, just before we get into the story, because we're going to go through the Randolph experience and how you got into your college experience, talk about your study abroad program, which is a really interesting story that I think people are going to want to hear.
Right.
What does a day look like for you right now? And I want to include some of the contextual landscape where you live in. I had the pleasure of attending your wedding. Thank you for that invite. My wife and I really enjoyed that a lot. So we really appreciate you on that. Tell us what a day in the life looks like right now for Innis Baah.
Pre-COVID or
just right now? Right now. I mean, I think, obviously everybody's dealing with changes, but what does life look like for you right now?
Yeah, so I mean, due to COVID-19 circumstances, I'm very blessed to be working from home. So my day typically starts around either 6 or 6:30, if I have the strength to wake up and do jogging around the neighborhood. I live in the West Orange community in New Jersey, about 40-minute drive from where I grew up in the Bronx. Moved to West Orange about 3 years ago. Very fortunate to get a house in a very nice area, not too far from the Bronx, not too far also from Manhattan, where my office is. The EY office that I typically go to is around 42nd Street, Times Square.
Gotcha.
So I'm officially, a transplant from New Jersey, but my parents are still in the Bronx. My siblings are. Most of my family, so it's just me, my wife, and my 9-month-old daughter.
Yeah, that's what I wanted you to get into. That was bearing the lead there. So
yeah,
indeed, so proud new father. Still less than a year old, so I feel okay saying proud new father. Got to celebrate your first Father's Day. Happy Father's Day. I'm
officially part of your club because you have 3 or 4.
Yeah, I have a pack. So I actually have 5 children altogether. Again, my high school story includes having a child at 19. So I have one older out there in the world, and then I have 4 at home. 13-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 3-year-old.
Yes. Cameron, I think that's one of the most impressive things about you. Because I feel like you've lived a lifetime. Like I remember when we were on the board, that's when you told me you had your first child at 19. And I mean, the way you carry yourself, your demeanor, I wouldn't have never known that you've lived 19, just that's a responsibility. So
it's always a surprise, I think, to high school students, especially when I'm there, and it's usually a surprise to even guests on this show when I say I didn't graduate from high school. Neither did I graduate from college. I ended up getting my GED, and I tell this story almost every time. But following the girl in red leather pants, you shouldn't do that. But that's why I've been involved with SBI for so long, is because I didn't have that guidance and direction when I was in the middle of high school, for sure. And then by the time I interned for SBI in 1996, my senior year of high school, there was already decisions that had been made and things that I was doing that, were far gone. And then, I was more interested in SBI at that time because I was calling record labels and I was doing some of the stuff because we were teaching business and career through the record industry, through music labels and that sort of thing, where we've sort of moved much more to a peer-to-peer. You're involved in a music group, involved in tech production, involved with STEP. We're going to teach you the CPI stuff. You got to make sure you maintain that grade point average. So the program has evolved in great ways over the years, but that was my start. But that's why I've stayed involved, because I'm passionate about making sure that young people especially see all the opportunities.
You want to know my start in SBI? Like, I don't know if you know this, but obviously, SBI has a base in Randolph. Yeah. But for me, I stole, or I kind of forced myself in SBI. And I'm not even sure if Mr. Thompson knows this.
We're getting a little ahead of ourselves here. I want to back up, all right? Because I want to tell this story right, because I love telling the story this way, because it gives everybody sort of a basis of understanding and make sure that somebody knows, that's maybe looks at your career at Deloitte and now Ernst Young, financial guy. So we're talking about the letters after your name that you're sort of humble on. You don't want to show, but professional product manager. What is it? A certified.
For the CFE, the fraud examiner, and that just all comes with the trade, right?
So listen, and this guy's so humble on it, but Innis Baah is official. He's out in the world. He's doing things, but I love to give people an understanding that you walked the same halls that these kids that are walking the halls these days, A. Philip Randolph did. You dealt with some of the same struggles. So talk to us. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to middle school. Where were you living? I know you were living in the Bronx, right? What part of the Bronx? Where were you going to middle school, and how did Randolph get on the radar for you?
Yep. I actually, I always get confused because, growing up in New York City, you always claim hoods, right? You always claim where you're from. And for me, it's always a struggle when I'm introducing myself to someone who's not from the five boroughs, because I grew up in Harlem, right, / Washington Heights, when I was there, and my family went to church in the Bronx. So I was always part of the Bronx and always knew of the Bronx, but we moved officially to the Bronx after high school.
Okay.
Right. So in middle school, I
remember you doing serious miles in vans for the church. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I had to retire as a church van driver a couple of years ago. But in middle school, even in elementary school, I came to this country at 10. And so when I came from Ghana. So when I came from Ghana, my family was already settled here. I had, 2 younger siblings. At the time, my sister was back home in Ghana. I started at a school called PS 28 in Harlem, 155th Street in St. Nicholas, and spent maybe 1 or 2 months at 4th grade, like the last grade of 4th grade, and spent the entire 5th grade at the time there, and went on to a school at the time, it doesn't exist anymore, which I believe was possibly one of the worst middle schools in Harlem at the time. It was called E.W. Stitt. Okay. If anyone is listening and they have any knowledge of this school, E.W. Stitt was the name. I think years down the line, they kind of broke it down into like different floors and different schools. The school wasn't performing well, but literally, the age and the time of the era that I grew up in was, to me, unlike any other, because it was around the time where, the neighborhood was a little bit more active in terms of like gang activity, a little bit more active in terms of, local pharmacists,
yes, indeed.
Like a better word. So it was just a lot of
pharmacists in front of my front door in the Bronx when I was living there.
Absolutely. You step outside and you go downstairs, you see one downstairs, you go to school. I literally, and I always say this everywhere I go, I literally think I had a fight every single week in middle school.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I've never seen you as that type of guy. Not during high school. Not during.
No, I had only one fight in high school. That was my freshman year with this a senior called James Hicks. But A. Philip Randolph at
That
the
name
time,
rings a bell. That name definitely rings a bell.
you probably know him, and he was a cool guy. But at the time that I went to Randolph, it had a reputation of being quote unquote like the Harlem of Manhattan per se. So it was really competitive to get into Randolph, and we didn't have
You mean like the Stuyvesant or man? What?
something, the Stuyvesant of Harlem or something like that nature. The point is, it was really competitive at the time. I'm not sure how it is now to get into Randolph, and I think my class was the genesis of
not as complicated, but yeah.
Yeah, but in middle school, I had a fight almost every week. Not because I wanted to have a fight, but at the time, that was the way of surviving. That was the way to let people know not to bother you or pick on you, for different reasons, because you're African or because, you look small, you can be picked on because you're not part of a gang. That kind of herd mentality, It was bad to the point, at one point, I spent 2 weeks at a hospital because a group of kids decided to do a wrestling move called the DDT.
Yeah, I'm familiar with all of the Hulk Hogan.
Yeah,
I don't know. I can't remember who did the DDT.
I don't remember either. I mean, when they dropped me over my head, I think
maybe somebody who's watching can give us an answer in the comments.
Yeah, it was definitely, it was something to remember, and I'm very grateful for EW Stitt because that was my genesis of, learning a lot about.
Why did you have a particular? I mean, obviously you weren't in the gangs, but why did you have a particular problem in general? Was it because you were, considered African and they were messing with you that way, or what was going on?
I mean, a number of reasons. For one, it's easy to pick on you when you have an accent, right? And at that time, I guess my English was not as,
Well, that's what I was thinking. Maybe because you were a little different and you weren't fitting in with the folks the way that they wanted you to fit in.
Different. You actually listen in class. You actually try to get good grades. And when I think about it now, it's kind of ridiculous because these are 11 to 13-year-olds. Like, we shouldn't have been on that type of mindset, but we were. But
I think you started off with it wasn't a good school, and when you have educators that aren't really leading by example and making sure that everybody is rising to a certain standard, my middle school was a challenging place as well. I got into fights when I was in middle school as well. I went to Hudson River Middle School, so I was a few blocks south of where
just a couple, just a couple, but that was the beginning. But Randolph was, for me, 180 because it had a different reputation. The social ills that plague many urban areas did not escape Randolph, but for whatever reason, Randolph just had a reputation of, it had its pockets, but you can also be part of a different type of community if you choose to.
What was the feel when you finally knew that you were going to Randolph? What was your first experience and feeling of entering that building?
For one, I remember when I was in middle school, the process was that you picked 3 schools, right? Yeah. Randolph was my number 1. Brooklyn Tech was number 2. And then there was a school called Norman Thomas. Yeah. That was like the third option. So I believe I got accepted to Randolph and Brooklyn Tech. No, I got accepted to Randolph and waitlisted for Brooklyn Tech, something like that. But I didn't really care about Brooklyn Tech. I wanted to go to Randolph. It was closer to home. I was really excited. I was ready for high school because I was ready to leave EW Stitt. I was so ready, to leave EW Stitt. And then also, at the time, I was really interested in sports. And so, Randolph had all these opportunities to be part of clubs, sports, and I was happy. I got accepted to it, and I had to spend a summer. They had a summer program called Bridge. So I had to do that program in order to fully matriculate into Randolph, but that prepared me a lot for high school. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And that's when I met I don't know if you know Mr. Kelly. But Mr. Kelly he was an English teacher at the time, but right now I believe he's recovering from COVID. We're all praying over him. He has my prayers. But he's my soccer coach, my English the bridge program director.
Wow.
And, you know, he ushered me into Randolph in a great fashion that I'm
That's
forever.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me about now you're in Randolph, you're leaving the challenges of middle school behind. What is your feeling as you're getting into freshman year? And shout out to Kelly Downing. Is that who you're talking about, Kelly Downing?
No, Kelly Downing is the tall black man.
Yeah. So he's
Yeah.
here. He just said proud of you, Innis. But I was like, because I know that's who I first thought of when you said Kelly, but I don't think he.
No. He was awesome. He was awesome. I remember him being so magnetic in high school because all of us looked
got
up to
his
him.
personality.
Yes, I hope my memory doesn't fail me, but I think he went to either Columbia Teaching College or one of the teaching college. He just commanded the room.
I don't know what he's saying no to, but he's just saying no.
On the chat.
Yeah, so we got comments on Facebook. Kelly said it wasn't me.
No. I remember.
Kelly, you quoting Shaggy now? What's going on?
Okay. So my memory is failing me, but I know he came with. Well, correct me. Did you come with a music background? But
I'll look it up. You can continue on with your story. Let's not get sidetracked. So talk to us about freshman year. And,
but I'm talking about Kelly, Lawrence Kelly.
Lawrence Kelly.
Yeah. So, intro to freshman year. My biggest thing coming into high school was that I didn't want to fail. You know, I wasn't really sure if I measured up at the time. I wasn't really sure if, you know, I would do well at Randolph because, you know, academically, I felt I was prepared, but I wasn't really sure if I was prepared, right? Academically, I wasn't really sure the challenge ahead. And that's the same thing that I had before going to college because of all the things that you hear, right? You know, high school's hard. You have to take the SAT. Obviously, English is my second language. And at the time, as opposed to now, it was a lot more challenging for me, you know, in terms of writing, reading as well, too. So I certainly had a lot of fears going into high school, but I think that summer program, as well as just doing well my first semester, kind of dispelled all that fear that I had about high school and just realized that it was just like the next step, like the next phase of life. And obviously getting involved in sports at a very young or at very early stage and the other clubs was a great way for me to like enter high school. So
that's awesome. So what sports and clubs were you involved in?
So for sports, my freshman year, from the jump, I joined the soccer team.
Okay.
That's all I wanted to play. I didn't really care about the other sports. And then so soccer season started, you know, the fall semester. So after soccer season, I didn't really want to go home like after school. So after soccer season, I decided to join the swimming team.
Yep.
Yeah, because that's during the winter time, and you know, funny thing, no one in my family knows how to swim. As a matter of fact, it's a running joke, I think, amongst most black people that black people don't know how to swim, but worse, Africans really don't know how to swim, right? So there's no history like that in my family, and I didn't know how to swim going into the swimming team, and there was a teacher or an instructor called Mr. Pena. He's actually on Facebook as well too. Very interesting guy. Taught me how to swim that freshman year, was able to make it on the team as a swimmer, and was part of the swimming team from my freshman year all the way up to my junior year. And then during the spring semester, I joined the volleyball team, which
you were part of a lot of teams.
All three. Throughout the year, I was part of a team. Throughout the year, I did sports.
That's crazy.
Throughout the year.
So I didn't know that about you. So when did you get involved with doing stuff with SBI? So
I forced my way into SBI. Although I was doing the sports, you know, SBI after school, just like the sports, right? So SBI, I always knew it was after my freshman year. So my sophomore year, junior, and senior year was active because of that annual dance program that SBI has. So I was wondering, like, okay, well, you know, what are these kids doing, you know, after school that is so interested that, you know, they always want to go and be part of it. And then, you know, people that I consider
for the uninitiated, we're talking about December show, May show.
Right.
We have big events where our dance groups, we have like 7 different dance groups in a given year. We have the Sisters and United Brothers, step teams. We have the Latin DVD, West Indian DVD.
Indian DVD. Oh my goodness, you're bringing back memories. Latin DVD was Indian DVD. UB, and someone that I considered a big brother at the time, Kwame Tufor, was UB.
Shout out to Kwame.
Yep, shout out to Kwame. He's a doctor now in Virginia. I believe
we got to get him on the show, man. You got to help me with that.
Oh, no problem. Say no more. So, through Kwame, you discovered what SBI was. And, at the time in high school, half the things that attract people to different programs are, women, right?
Okay. We're about to have a red leather pants story. I feel that coming.
So it was always great to sneak your way into SBI and watch people practice and mingle. But then it became more than just, forcing your way in. It became more of Mr. Thompson seeing you and asking you to do something and be useful.
Yes.
Not caring if you were part of the program, if you weren't part of the program. As long as you were there, young man, make yourself useful. Do something.
That's how it rolls. Yes, indeed.
So after sophomore year, junior year, I became more useful. I started taking pictures at the shows, the May show, the fall shows. Visited Mr. Thompson more at his little corner office at Randolph. Just being useful, just being around, and certainly taking advantage of all the different programs SBI offered, all while not being officially part of the program. So
I'm assuming though that you were taking part in career day and CCPI activities. Yeah. So you were official. I don't know why you're saying you weren't official.
No, my sophomore year I was unofficially not part of it because I didn't, whatever process you have to take in terms of signing your name or making sure you attend the meeting.
You were resistant to registration.
Yeah, but I didn't care. I saw the value in it.
Because I love hearing the stories about the teachers as well. So you were talking about Lawrence Kelly. Who else were folks that sort of shaped your Randolph experience?
Oh man, I can definitely list off a number of people. The good, the great far outseed, the bad, I should say. A couple of teachers that I remember off the top of my head. Dr. Davidson. Mm-hmm. He was a chemistry professor. Dr. Davidson is the reason why I looked into, or he was the genesis of me looking into liberal arts schools, because he told me about Carleton University in Minnesota, and he had a vested interest in me doing well. Right, because I failed his first exam in chemistry. Mr. Alusik, my math teacher, my freshman or sophomore year math teacher, Mr. Alusik, to me was the coolest thing in high school for me, because just the way he related with students. I believe he had a wife named Miss Jessom. Just the way he related, just the way he taught math. I'm not particularly a math student or math person, but he made it so easy for me to understand.
Which is why you went to a career in finance, right?
Finance, right? I avoided all this time and then just got back to it. Mr. Lusick, Miss Honore, who was my earth science teacher, may she rest in peace. She passed away a couple months ago. Miss Honore, obviously Mr. Thompson, comes to mind. Mr. Garrick, my econ teacher, was very, very instrumental. Miss Franklin, very instrumental. Mr. Williams, my history teacher, the best history teacher that I had. He made the class funny, very relatable. He had a sense of authority in his voice. May he rest in peace as well too. I know he passed away many years ago. I also took classes with Mr. Fry, who is a legend at Randolph as well too.
Tag Mr. Fry on this. It's so great for you to talk about teachers, because a lot of times I'll get through these interviews and we haven't mentioned not one teacher. And I know that for some folks, and particularly the education part of high school is like the last thing they think back to and remember. But I know that teachers really do shape our lives, and you spend so much time in the classroom. And while they're I'm sure in every kids' high school experience are going to be teachers that aren't their favorites, the fact that there are folks that really do shape our minds and shape our perspective on the world is an amazing thing. So I'm so happy that you did speak about the teachers. Thank you. So
no, we were spoiled.
Talk to me about junior and senior year. You're marching towards the end of the high school chapter. What was going on junior year? Were you getting prepared for senior year? And then talk to us about senior year and what was going on with college applications and all that jazz.
Sure. So as we all know, junior year, as we all hear during our freshman and sophomore years, that is the most important year of your high school career, and certainly played out to be the case for me as well too. At the time, you have to get ready for regions, make sure that your grade point average is on point. I am a first generation college student in my family, and so just the thought of exploring the college options for me wasn't really it was daunting, right? Because I wasn't really sure exactly how I would go through the college process. I wasn't really sure how, the process I would take to select the school. I wasn't sure how my family would, and I would be able to afford, for my college education. And, quite frankly, if not for a program like SBI, which, helped me tremendously identifying schools that, fit my skill set, identifying schools that would take me out my comfort zone. I'm not really sure how I would have went through my junior year as well as my senior year, because SBI was definitely pivotal for me at that point. So, I think I went through junior year and senior year just like how most high school students, go through it, just worrying about the exams and doing well in the SAT, which, to this day, I don't really, I didn't do well in the SAT. I didn't like the fact that we had to take the SAT. But I was prepared, I made sure my grade point was, my GPA was on point.
You'd be happy to know now for students that I think a lot of colleges are paying less attention to the SAT. I think it's still a big deal, but there's a lot of colleges that are taking it out of their review process.
It was daunting because like my class is the first class that we had to take both versions. So I think in the beginning, I don't know how it is now. Again, I'm 10 plus years removed, but the maximum score when I started high school was 1,600. So we took our first test, I think my junior year, and then they switched it to the 2,400 cycle. I believe that's what happened. But either way, I didn't do well in either one of them. Right? I didn't do well in either one of them. And, that was a huge metric for a lot of schools. And I just don't do well in standardized tests. I just don't do well in standardized tests,
You're not alone. You're not alone at all. It's a big issue in the education system, and a lot of debate over what's the best way because you want a standard system, but at the same time, standardized tests aren't necessarily the best way to judge somebody's performance in the work world. They're not the best way to judge somebody's, because a lot of them end up being cultural knowledge tests instead of actual, metric or what do you call it? Merit-based tests.
Yes. I completely agree. For whatever reason, I'm just glad that students now don't have to face those kind of daunting.
Oh, they still do. They surely do, but it's getting less. There's being less weight placed on it, but still SAT is a part of the process. And for some of our students, they have to go through that. Because in New York, you got the sort of the double-edged sword. Not only do you have to go through the SAT process, but you definitely have to go through the Regents process, which again is a whole nother layer of standardized tests that you have to run through just to graduate.
Right, but even I feel more comfortable with the Regents because you spend either the entire semester or the full year preparing for Regents, right?
Right. And that's the issue with those tests is that you spend your time studying for the test instead of actually learning history and languages
Yeah.
and art and maybe financial management and maybe some of these things that kids should know before they start making huge financial decisions and life decisions as they step into the college world, right? Yeah, there's a lot of debate on that, but let me get us back on track here and focus. So senior year, you are charging towards the end here. Thanks for shouting out Sound Business in terms of getting you in sort of mind of the different colleges. So what are the colleges that you applied to? Which colleges did you get into, and how did you end up on your decision of where you wanted to go?
Okay. So, I mean, senior year, I think I had a lot of choices because I didn't want any, I made sure I had a lot of choices. I didn't want any opportunity to not be a college student. I wasn't leaving any chance to any one or two schools to accept me or to decline or reject my application for me to be home. So I really applied to all the CUNYs available in the CUNY form. Maybe I think it's a maximum of 5 at the time, and a maximum of 5 SUNYs. So I selected 5 SUNYs. And then for the private schools or the other schools, the schools that I can remember right now were Syracuse, which was at the top of my list at the time, Hotspur, which I applied to at the time, Hobart William Smith, which obviously ended up going to. I had a long shot in Columbia University for other reasons.
I think I remember talking to you about that.
Yeah, I wanted to go to Columbia so bad, not because of the academics, right? But because I wanted to play soccer for the D1 team.
Oh, okay. I don't remember that conversation, but I think I remember a conversation around saying, don't go to school in New York City.
Yeah, which was a great advice, because to this date, I just don't know how people go to school. For grad school, I can see that. I just don't know how, folks that grew up in New York City still do CUNYs and,
It's tough. Brian Ortiz was on yesterday. He took part in tech production almost all 4 years while he was at Randolph and SBI. He's an introverted guy. And I know he had a tough time with the living situation. And, he graduated. He graduated from City Tech. There's students that'll go across the street to City College and graduate from City College, and more power to them. I was telling Brian this, never going to knock somebody for getting a college education. But the reason we're going to tell somebody to go outside the city is because statistically and from a educational point of view, from a networking point of view, we're looking for you to get that experience much like you received, so you can talk to it. But you got to have the grades. You got to have, parental, parents got to be on board, especially with immigrant families. It's very difficult to get them to sign off and let their son go a few hours north where they're not close by so that they can help with the family and make sure that they're going to church on Sundays and all the things that go along with those aspects of life. But as we're going to get into, so what pushed you? What was the final thing that made you decide on Hobart William Smith colleges?
Well, so for one, prior, applying and to all these different schools, I had attended and the one of the CUNY programs that we had, where you can take 1 or 2 classes during my senior year.
At City College?
At City College.
Yeah.
So I think it was either my junior year, spring, or fall senior. Either way, it was a huge eye opener for me because it just wasn't it, right? Because I sat in one of these classes and the level, it just wasn't competitive enough for me. Right, like bottom line, it was not competitive enough for me.
That's huge. I think that piece of advice is like go and see what a City College class is or a CUNY class is, because that's something that's probably, especially if you're challenging yourself? What was your GPA in high school?
It was 87 point something, which for whatever reason, to this day, I don't really know why. Like my GPA was good enough, but it shouldn't have been that good to rank me 15th in my class. If you really think about it, right? 87 GPA should rank you maybe in 100.
I didn't even know they do rankings like that in Randolph, but I guess they do, right?
Yeah, they did at the time, and I remember vividly. I ranked 15th or something like that at Randolph. So I did well academically. I took all the AP classes that were available to me, and
that's probably why your GPA was. AP classes are not easy, and that's one of the things when we're talking about Randolph and the fact that it's a big school can offer things like that. That's amazing.
Yeah. So sorry about that. 1 second.
No, you're good. You're good, Innis. Nothing's wrong on our end. Can you hear me, Innis?
I can hear you. I just hope this doesn't restart while we're on it.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't see anything, so you can keep talking. We're good.
So, I had my introduction to Randolph was really weird, right? Because at the time I was looking for schools, I obviously had the counsel of Mr. Thompson and you, and Dr. Davidson at the school, who were all weirdly advocating for me to look at liberal arts schools, right? Like the term liberal arts in general in high school was just foreign. You don't quite know exactly what liberal arts mean. You don't quite exactly know, what to expect. All you know is that it's a place or it's a school that is typically, small, typically academically different than what we are exposed to in the public school system at Randolph. And liberal arts schools are typically away from the New York City, our environments. And so they, Thompson, you, Dr. Davidson encouraged me to look at different liberal arts schools like obviously Hobart William Smith, the school near Albany, Vassar, I believe, Skidmore, Williams, those type of schools. And so one time we had a college recruiter. We had a college fair, and the college recruiter came. And so, we had all these different schools, the CUNYs, the BIT schools, the Delphis, and all the students were standing at those known schools, right? And there was this one guy that was standing at the Hobart William Smith place. So I went to speak to him, and he was surprised as to why I came up to him. And so I'm like, hey, tell me more about your school.
That's not the response I would expect from a guy that's sitting there trying to recruit folks to school.
Yeah.
All right.
Because everyone is at the other schools, the well-known schools, the Syracuse, the Delphi, the Hofstra's, and no one was at the table. And I really took an interest at the Hobart William Smith. And the only thing that I would pride myself on in regards to Hobart is that I believe I'm the first person from Randolph to go to Hobart.
Is that right?
I believe so.
That's crazy because we've had a bunch since you for sure.
After me, I know we've had at least. I know Joshua, Juliana, at least Denise. I know we've had at least up to 10 students from Randolph.
We've definitely had quite a few. If that's true, I'm sure that that's probably right. And if it is, you definitely started a trend there because we've had many, many students attend Hobart since you.
That's my life accomplishment. If I didn't do anything in life, I was able to, open the floodgates at that school for, A. Philip Randolph alums. And so I spoke to him. We kicked it off and we exchanged information, and he challenged me. He challenged me to come and visit. And at the time, I was a little bit skeptical, but I accepted the challenge. I went up to visit November of my senior year. Went up to the school, had an interesting visit, and leaving campus, I swore to myself that I would never go back to that school. Great visit, but I'm not going back. And came back, had that conversation with my parents and obviously with, some of the counselors, Mr. Brennan. and they spoke very highly of the school. So I didn't really understand. Like, I've never heard of a school called Hobart William Smith. I went on campus and I literally did not see many people that looked like me.
Of course.
In the middle of nowhere in New York State. It was a 6-hour drive away. I didn't have a car, so I'll be taking the bus there. It was just a different world. And so I think I was justified in saying to myself that this is not the place for me, right? Like, I need to go to a school away, but maybe 2 hours away would help. I need to go to school, but maybe a school that was, quote unquote, more diverse in terms of pigmentation would be helpful. But I didn't think about the upside. I didn't think about the possible network that I'll be joining going to a Hobart William Smith. I didn't think about the impact in terms of education, sitting in a classroom your freshman year where the max number of people is 10 or 15, right? Something that is not at 8 Philip Randolph, where the minimum is 20 or 25 in a classroom. I didn't consider the fact that they had access to 30 different countries for study abroad, right? I didn't consider the fact that they had 100 different clubs. I didn't consider the fact that they gave grants to students that want to do community service or start your own different programs. I didn't consider the fact that you can create your own major. I didn't consider the fact that you can live off campus. I didn't consider the fact that you can do anything on this campus, right? I didn't think about anything besides the fact that it was just different from 8 Philip Randolph, right? So once I had those chats with Mr. Thompson and Mr. Brennan at the time, and they gave me the pros and cons, I started thinking, this actually may be a good school for me to go to, right? Now, mind you, at the time, I really wanted to go to Syracuse University. That was my number one choice, right? Because Syracuse has a name, has a big basketball team, and, it was just something that a place I wanted to go to, aside from Columbia with the whole soccer thing. But once I got back my financial aid package, I think the decision was a lot easier to make than any other school at the time. And the school made it easy for me. They gave me the HOP program to be part of, to prepare me. They made sure that I had advisors and counselors, and, Hobart was just like the best decision that I made, for college.
There you are.
Oh, snap.
That's the end of the ride there. And I love the picture of the alumni on the website. It's pretty cool.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. Is that where you got this picture from?
That's where I got that picture from.
I thought you probably got it from like one of my profile pics or something. That's amazing. Wow.
You didn't know that was up there?
I totally forgot about it.
Okay. So you finally you got your financial aid package, and they took care of you for the most part. Are you still owing money to Hobart?
Yeah. Initially, my package, I could have gone to. Let me just say, I could have gone to like a SUNY, Potsdam on a full ride. I could have gone to a number of schools on a full ride, right? But the business case for me at the time was more so, what's the long-term prospects, right? What school is going to give you the best opportunity to be successful in life, right? And it's a hard decision to make at the time, especially if absolutely. It's a hard decision, especially if
So what convinced family? What convinced you that Hobart? I know you had teachers advocating for it, but how much money were you going to owe per year?
Per year. So at that time, which was unheard of for me or any one of my family members, the tuition per year was $50,000. So that compared to a city college, which it would probably be around $5,000 to $10,000.
But they did give you aid, right? So what was going to be your loan package?
Oh no! There's no way I could have afforded $50,000 per year at the time.
Right.
My mother didn't make $50,000 in a year. Right. My package came out to be. They gave me a $25,000 scholarship, and aid gave me about another 20. And so there were $5,000 left in terms of out of pocket. But that on top of, other costs, other fees, school technology fees and
Was
things
that
like that.
inclusive of room and board, that 50,000?
The 50,000 was inclusive of, yes, the 50, it ran up to like 52, right? But the other tuition was included room and board. But
So you
after the
were
eight,
about 7,000 around there for a year.
yep, it started around 7 to 8,000.
Okay.
By my second year, it was around 10,000 in terms of like out of
It
pocket.
does go up, right? Yeah, it's one of the challenges too. Is like this is one of the questions if you're getting into school. What is it going to be next year? Can you give me a
Right.
idea? And they might not be able to tell you. They may not.
They wouldn't be able to tell you because
you don't know that it could change.
they wouldn't be able to, because they're doing this whole tuition wars with other competitive schools. But in all, I finished school with around 40 grand, 40 to 44 grand in student loan debt. Because I chose the loan option because we couldn't do it, right? We couldn't, the 10 grand out of pocket, even that was stretching it for the family,
Yeah.
So, we did the loans round. I took out loans, came out of school with 44 grand out, of loans, and managed those loans myself and paid those loans off myself.
All right, so let's talk about how we racked up that debt. So you were accepted at Hobart. You made that decision. That was the place, even though it was going to cost you some money. So you did they have sort of a bridge program at Hobart as well? Were you part of a summer program?
Yes. So interestingly, they have a program called the HEOP, the SOP HEOP program, right, for underprivileged, financially challenged.
And you were in that?
And so I technically didn't really qualify for that because my mother at the time made around 45 grand per se. And I think there was like a financial threshold where I probably missed that threshold by like 2 or 3 grand.
Yeah,
and so
frustrating financial pieces like we're not poor enough, like you're not poor enough, like where are things at? So
it just didn't make sense. Like I'm not rich. Like my family don't have this money. As a matter of fact, I even wrote back to the school because the initial financial aid package wasn't big enough. So I wrote a letter to Hobart,
which is what you're supposed to do for anybody that's watching. This is how the game is played.
Thompson and Brennan coached me through it. Like they told me literally, I'm like, I want to go here, but I can't. Like the package is not sufficient enough for me at this point. And even though they've given me 25 and I have 20 from financial aid and it's about 5 to 7 left, I just need a little more. So I wrote that letter. The counselor, Mr. Baruda, who to this date is one of my biggest mentors in life, read the letter, sent it to an alum who was a donor, and he decided to add $2 grand to my tuition at the time.
Wow.
$2 grand to the tuition. So I was that gesture, the gesture of them even going back to their coffers and giving me an additional funds, at the time told me a lot about that school, right? Because my other friends that were going to a SUNY, Binghamton, or
it's a whole different experience, yeah.
And you're just not having that kind of interaction with your with
a whole lot less money to go there, but it's not that experience, yeah.
A whole lot. And so I'm very happy to say I got an additional $2 grand from Hobart William Smith and decided to take that financial risk of taking out those loans because it is a risk, right? When you're a senior in high school, you don't really understand like the implications of you taking out that loan from these banks, to finance your education. But I did.
Yeah, nobody's giving you that financial education in high school, that's for sure.
Yeah, which is not good. It's not good, but thankfully.
Was there a summer program that you were going to at Hobart?
Yep. So they added me to their HEOP program, which
nice.
I had to complete it in order to be officially accepted into the school, along with other, the 30 other people that I went to the HEOP program with. And that too, just like the bridge program at Randolph, was the best decision that I made because I had an early semester, head start, right? I knew the campus from the inside out. I knew the kind of academic challenge that I was walking into, right? I knew how to prepare. I wasn't walking to the school blindly my freshman year, because of that HEOP program. And I'm very, very grateful.
That speaks to the importance of those programs. So now you get on campus, you're part of this kind of bridge summer program with HEOP. what is your initial kind of feeling of now you're a college student? And, you know, I imagine there was one sort of feeling as there was a few students on campus with the summer program.
Yeah.
And then now here comes the wave of students, of a whole bunch of people that don't look like you necessarily. Tell us what the first couple semesters are looking like for you.
Yep. So, I mean, for me, at Hobart, the biggest shock or the biggest challenge my first couple semesters was the culture differences and the economic differences between me and my peers. Because Hobart, at the time, and possibly now, has students that, you know, come from very affluent backgrounds. And, you know, growing up in Harlem and the Bronx, that's honestly, that's not something that I was used to, right? I was in, you know, going to school in New York City. None of us drove to school. We all took the subway or the bus. You know, none of us, at least none of my peers had, you know, fathers.
I was definitely on a subway or a bus. Right?
You know,
the way it worked.
You know, but everybody that I went to college with, or most people, you know, went to either private schools or public schools that were heavily funded, right? And you could tell the difference, right? You know, none of us really had, you know, fathers and family members in the financial service industry at Randolph, at least that I was exposed to. If they were, I didn't know. But my peers,
they're probably keeping it a secret if they did.
You know,
you work at a bank. Oh, you got money. Little do they know. So, how did that affect your experience of Hobart? I mean, when I think about Hobart, because we've gone up there and we've done the tours, and so from a sort of a outside looking in, you know, for a student that doesn't know what a school like Hobart offers, this is the view that I have, and we can sort of square and frame it with your actual experience of attending Hobart. So you walk a tour of Hobart. If you're doing it in the fall, it's a beautiful, lovely campus.
Beautiful campus.
It's gorgeous. It feels historic. You walk around. There are scientific labs. They have an experience they advertise from biology. They have a glass bottom boat that they talk about in the lake that people can go out on and experience education. This is another level of practical education that they provide to students. Whereas, you know, if you're going to Brooklyn College, and this is the thing, you know, I did not graduate high school, but I had applied to some colleges, and because Brooklyn didn't know that I didn't graduate, I got into Brooklyn College. And so I after high school, I'm like, all right, let me go and take a look at Brooklyn College, just because I was like curious, and I did want to go to college even though I hadn't applied myself. So I go down to Brooklyn College campus and I walk into a classroom, and it's this sort of old. This is back 1996, but still, you know, I was looking at, even at that time, what was a very old, big box TV hanging precipitously at the edge of a somewhat like lecture hall type of classroom.
Yeah.
And I just looked in there and I was like, nope. Like, this is just not it. When you frame that classroom, which I imagine if we went to today, it would probably be a little bit updated, but not that much updated. If you frame that and then go and look at a classroom at Hobart where you could probably, once you're inside that building, transpose that and say that you were at a corporate office like Ernst Young or IBM, or, you know, because they are constantly updating. Everything is classy, high-end material, built to last, enriched, all the words that you can throw at it, but they are providing a very high level and up-to-date education. And that's sort of the frame of reference. So just to give people the view of the college that I have walking around the campus. So now you're there and you're in this very rich environment.
Very.
No pun intended. But certainly it's there, right? You have
Right.
rich environment, you got rich folks. They do go hand in hand. Not everybody looks like you. There's different economic class levels. So how is that affecting your classroom experience and your campus experience?
Yeah. So Cameron, I think, as a young person, you can take that in a couple ways, right? You can internalize that and be resentful, right? Or you can internalize that and strive to learn from your surrounding and learn, if you want to be in that position, how to get to that position. And I think that was the approach that I took, right? I mean, there were certain challenges of being in that kind of environment that I wasn't previously exposed to. Neither were those people previously, majority of them, exposed to someone like me. And so, I was me and my cohorts, or the friends that I came in with from the program, were more so a myth to some of these kids coming from these backgrounds. But it was a wonderful opportunity for me to really step outside my comfort zone, right? And I'm very glad that I did, and I was able to make that tough decision to say, I am not going to go to a CUNY, because it was the same people that I went to high school with that I'll be going to college with, right? As opposed to Hobart, where it really is someone from a different world, economically, socially, racially, in every aspect of life.
Right.
And although at the time you may know it, you may not, Hobart for me served as a microcosm of the world, right? Because there's no difference between Hobart and Ernst Young. For me, there is none. The only difference is I'm getting paid right now working, because there, everyone that I sat in class with were someone from a different background, someone from a different, social class, someone that spoke differently. Like one example, right? My freshman year, I began to really start to think about like how I spoke. In Harlem, you tend to slang your words. You tend to say, what I mean, or throw in a couple curse words here and there per se. Not to say that's a bad thing, but it's just like how we converse. You spend a semester at Hobart William Smith, and you start saying, "Hey, dude," or "FNA, dude," or "God damn it, jolly," like just tiny stuff like that, right? Just tiny stuff like that. Where you come back home to the Bronx, and you notice that your vocabulary is different because you are in a different environment. You notice that you are paying attention to different things in your neighborhood, right? You notice it's just getting exposure to different environment that was very pivotal for me, that I'm glad I chose that route, because had I not, I think I would have been in that same bubble that I was in high school.
Yeah. So you're adjusting.
Yep.
I think it's appropriate to say you're getting comfortable freshman year with code switching, right?
That's the word, code switching.
Yeah.
Lots of code switching. The freshman year was challenging, not academically, because I did well my freshman year academically. It was more so challenging in terms of, just your surrounding. But I think now, I was always ready for those kind of things, right? When I think about the challenges that other people who were from the same background that I was one faced, and perhaps left school and went back to the city.
I was going to ask you, did you have some peers that, were a part of the HELP program that, because I know we definitely have some people that they went to Hobart and it was challenging. I think, because of the rigor, because of the culture, because of financial aspects, there were folks that definitely, were challenged and weren't able to stay at Hobart.
Yeah,
I think some folks. So I don't know if Benny stayed. Benny Calderon. I think Janella Jack graduated from Hobart. I believe Joshua Serrano definitely did. Right.
Josh definitely did. Josh is a really good.
Neil Jaiko.
Yeah, very proud of him. Very proud. All these kids, or all these young men, are like 3 or 4 years my junior, and so like.
Yep. Sima Rana.
Sima?
And then Tatiana Jack, I think, also attended there. And then Vivian, I think, went up, but I don't think she stayed.
Yes, there was lots of kids from other schools in the city that, when I was there, came and they left, or they just couldn't really handle that type of environment, right? They just couldn't handle it, right? You can't. It's not New York City. You can't go from block to block. Transportation is not feasible. And then I think coming in, people really underestimate the social pressure that a school like that can give you, right? When you are when you're attending class with a kid that drives a better car than a professor, that can give you subconscious depression without you even knowing it. Right? When you have to bust your butt or you're behind to get an internship during the summer, and one of your classmates has a guaranteed job after college, that can kind of play tricks with your mind, right? Or when someone's allowance for the semester is $3,000 on other extracurricular activity, and $3,000 is probably how much you're going to get your entire college career from your parents. That can play games with your mind. But for me, I really internalize all these different social pressures and different things, and I didn't let it affect me. I actually let it motivate me. I like the fact that I was exposed to those kind of things. I like the fact that my friend, or my roommate, his father was the CEO at Orion Trading. I like the fact that I had classmates from China and India. I like the fact that kids that I would have never befriended, I'm still friends with now because I chose to go to school, and we have personal relationships. I slept over a professor's house on multiple occasions, and that's not something that I think I would have gotten from a Syracuse University, right? All of the job opportunities.
I think you need to put some context in that, because some people might hear that the wrong way.
Okay, let me correct it. So the school is so intimate in terms of the relationship you cultivate with your professors and your teachers, that you can develop a friendship with a professor to the point where you can get to know their family, you can get to know their daughter. They can invite you to come and eat Thanksgiving dinner if you're not going back home. If you're free to them to extend, they probably open your guest room to you during off times. And so there were a couple of occasions for me that I had a chance, and I went to Rochester to hang with one of my professors, Professor Dahuder, professor in history, African history. And one of my other professors, Professor McCorkle, who was also an Africana studies professor, really get to know them intimately, know their family. And so when I mean sleep over, I mean,
I think people sound out a little bit better now, because it could have sounded a little interesting if you didn't put the context on it. So you develop these relationships. So let's move through this. So sophomore year, junior year, talk to us about it, because I think soon we get into travel abroad.
Yeah.
The study abroad program. So walk us through sophomore and junior year.
Yeah. So I mean, freshman year, I got my bearings on campus. I really learned the landscape of the campus. You kind of learn school politics as well freshman year. And so, sophomore year, I was ready to fly, right? I knew everything like the back of my hand. And so at the end of my freshman year, I applied to be an RA, because that was another way to alleviate some of the financial burden that I had in terms of, aid. I was very grateful and got the job as a RA my freshman year. And it was a great responsibility for me to have, and also joined a number of clubs on campus. But the one that I'm really proud of and very memorable was, the Black Student Union on campus, Sankofa. And that provided a platform for me and other students, Black, white, Hispanics, to get together and talk about social justice, talk about issues that are important in our communities, in our wider community, talk about the kind of challenges we faced on campus amongst ourselves, right? Because it was a form of therapy, it was a form of learning, it was a form of development, right? Those conversations, like those 1 hour, 2 hour conversations we had were very critical to our understanding. These are kind of things that honestly I remember more than the classes that I took. Right. So my sophomore year was great. RA, I had a position within Sankofa, leadership position.
You were an RA sophomore year?
Yes. I kept busy.
And how was your RA experience? Because I know I've talked to some folks that were RAs and it was a challenging thing.
Oh, for me, I had a blast. I ran my ship really well. I had a really good relationship with all the students because they knew what they wanted out of the dorm. My dorm was dirty, and I knew how I wanted to run it. I knew that there was no way.
You weren't going crazy with lit candles and drawers on the floor and all that stuff.
No. See, my strategy was that I told them for the first day, I know you guys are freshmen. I know you guys are looking forward to a fun college experience. I know you guys have been dreaming about that. I am going to be easy on you. I'm not going to shut anything down. I just need you to do one thing for me. Just respect my rules, which are very simple. Clean up after yourself and make sure that during the weekdays, you respect your neighbor. So that means that you're not playing loud music at 10 or 11. And God honest truth, everyone were so respectful to me on that level because I looked out for them. During the weekends when they were having parties and drinking illegally because they were minors and things, I gave them alert when campus police were coming, right?
It's like, listen, Monday to Friday, you're going to wear the shirt and tie, and then Saturday, Sunday, I don't care what you're doing. I'm going to look the other way. All right, I see how it is, and it's all right.
One of them may listen to this at some point, but I kept it honest because I knew there was no way to like stop those kind of activities. Like I know what was going on in every single dorm.
People are going to definitely be people. There's a limit on what you can control. Absolutely.
Right. So I set those parameters and kept the place clean and kept the level. I only lost my RA job because I went abroad. That was the only reason.
Say it again.
I only lost my RA job because I went abroad.
Oh, okay, I got you. So was that junior year?
That was my fall junior year. So I was an RA my sophomore year.
Talk to us about this. First of all, how the study abroad became a part of your curriculum, and what made you choose the study abroad program, because you went to China. So why did you choose China? Why was this a part of your education? Why did you choose it to be a part of your education?
Well, at the time, and then I went to Hobart William Smith from 2006 to 2010. Hobart, along with other schools like Williams and Skidmore, they really prided themselves in their study abroad programs. At the time that I was there, they had about 28 to 30 different countries that the students had access to. And I think their percentage of students studying abroad was above 50%. It might be around 60, perhaps, that a student studying abroad. So they really pushed it from your freshman year, but they also encourage you to plan ahead so that you can fit it within your college career in terms of which semester you wanted to go. And so from my freshman year, I had pondered on just the whole traveling abroad, and if I was to travel abroad, what country, and then also if I'm picking a country, which program would help me with my major or completing my major. And so really out of the 30 programs that Hobart had, I really could have went to 15 to 20 different schools because those countries had courses that I can take towards my major.
Okay.
And so for me, my decision really was based on, once again, taking that leap of faith and going to a place that was outside my comfort zone, just like how Hobart was my first couple years, or was before I went to Hobart, right? So I could have went to South Africa, but then I thought to myself, I'm African. I can always go to South Africa at some point, right? I could have gone to Europe, and I think Europe would have also been a great experience. Different culture. Don't want to discredit it, but I thought maybe America is a mini, or is America is the cousin of Europe.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say cousin is a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't see the.
So something had to draw you to China. So what
Yeah.
drew you to China?
Honestly speaking, it was kung fu movies.
Oh, I did not expect that answer.
not because, not that I was going to learn kung fu, or it was the fact. I thought about it this way, right? I grew up in Harlem. I lived in the Bronx, right? At 135th Street and in Amsterdam, there's a Chinese restaurant right down the hall, right? In all our neighborhoods in the Bronx and Harlem, there's Chinese food places that after school, after we play games, we all go and grab Chinese foods. And the fries were something that we always wanted to get, right? I sat down and thought to myself, man, I lived amongst, or we interact with Chinese people all the time, but I don't interact with them outside the Chinese food place. I don't really know or have context to Chinese people outside Jet Li movies and all these kung fu movies that I'm watching at high school that my friend Ina Kapori always used to send me in cassettes at the time, right? So my only idea about China was through the movies and through the restaurants. And Lord knows the restaurants weren't a really good experience at the time. Just because of maybe the relationship.
I'm definitely gonna have to ask the question about how the food paralleled. But all right, so you made the decision.
It wasn't the food; it was more so the relations that that as young Black men in the neighborhoods we have with the Chinese restaurants. Our only relationship was the transactional base. It's transactional, right? I won.
So you made a decision based on the fact that it was a complete unknown for you, but you didn't want it to be unknown.
Right. It was the known unknown.
So you make this decision. What were you doing with your summers?
Prior going to China, the fall of my junior year, that summer I had an internship with Target as an executive intern, and that was through Target Corporation.
Yeah.
As an executive intern, so they take you through this entire process of learning about your business, from the stockpiling section to the corporate section to the HR department at the time. And that was through Hobart William Smith's career department.
That's amazing. The
summer before, which was the summer of my sophomore year, my freshman year, sophomore year, in between, I had an internship with Coldwell Banker, the real estate company, right? And I also got involved with some other things in the city, but I kept busy in the summer up until that point, right?
So you had the Target internship, which I imagine that had to open your eyes, and also had to have some parallels with your China experience, because I imagine so much of the products coming into Target are coming from China. I imagine there was a little bit of learning from that.
Yeah, it was an eye opener, right? Because being in China in itself, you learn that it's a different world, right? In the U.S., we are in a bubble. Like New York City was a bubble in itself.
I want to back up for a second. How was that plane ride?
16 hours, very long, it was the longest ride of my life. It was painful. It was daunting. And and I got to the airport. Nobody picked me up, and so I'm at the airport, 20 years old. I don't know how to speak a word in Chinese. I don't know how to say ni hao ma, and that's not even Chinese. They speak in Hong Kong. They spoke Cantonese.
Right.
So it was just like it was
right. So there's just so everybody knows, because Chinese isn't a language, right? So we have the main
is Mandarin. Mandarin.
And then you have Cantonese, which is number 2, right?
Yes, Cantonese is spoken in Hong Kong, but but most people in Hong Kong know Mandarin because they are descendants of mainland people in mainland China. But Cantonese is different from
Did you spend
Mandarin.
all of your time in China in Hong Kong?
So I spent the school that I stayed in was in Hong Kong. So the semester was spent in Hong Kong, but I traveled in mainland China. I traveled in Guangzhou. I traveled to Shenzhen, which was like a huge place to buy these electronic. I went to Beijing, and it was at around the time that we had the Olympics. So it was quite interesting being a
Oh,
black man in
wow.
Beijing. Yeah. So I had a fans. Like I was waving, telling people I was Obama and everything, you know.
Were you a complete rarity over there? Were you?
It was shocking because I would have thought that, you know, Hong Kong is more akin to New York City because they're used to seeing foreigners, but even that they're used to seeing white people. They're not used to seeing blacks, right? At least that was the feeling that I got. But in mainland China, I was more of an oddity, and it shocked me because I would have thought that at the time, because of the Summer Olympics, that they would have been exposed to more people, that I wouldn't be a rarity, you know? But I found myself at times, at the time I had an afro, found myself at times being, you know, picked on by people who wanted to touch my hair or they wanted to like take a picture with me. And it wasn't in any malicious way. It was more so like, oh my God, I see
They
you.
were very curious because they
Yeah.
hadn't seen somebody like you before.
And I took advantage of it. And in a lot of situations, like the restaurants, I got extra food when I asked for it, you know, or, you know, where hostels that I stayed, you know, you get more more better treatment, I guess. They were great for me. They were great.
You took advantage of it, right? Because I imagine somebody else might have dealt with it difficultly, but you embraced it.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
especially somebody trying to touch my hair. I'm like,
but you know, I had that on campus too. Like the campus was no different. The campus, you know, I still keep in touch with my friends in China. I still, to this day, we still talk. We still have a great relationship. I joined the soccer team when I was in China, for God's sake.
wow.
Like I was part of the official soccer team of Lingnan
I
University.
feel like this is new information for me because I don't remember I don't remember soccer in Randolph, and I don't remember, but you know, I saw what I saw, and you know, people shared what they shared, and it was like separate lives. But I don't remember you being a big soccer guy. And now I go out and when my legs don't fail me, I go out and play soccer. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I go and run around, kick the ball.
Yeah, no, it was great for me. It was great for me. Like, but back to your original question, why China? Long story short, I chose it because it was different.
No, it's great. So talk to me about the time in country. Obviously, you said you traveled around. Olympics were going on. What was the experience like in classroom? Did you learn the language? Were you? I imagine study abroad program.
Yeah.
Some folks spoke English. Were your classes in Cantonese?
So what sold me on the program was that they told me they spoke English at the school, you know, and Hong Kong would be 95% English speaking. But I quickly found out that was not the case. Even in the classrooms, that was not the case, you know. But I made the best out of it. You know, I made the best out of it. My professors spoke English. Some of them, I took 4 classes. You know, a couple of them spoke English, but you had to pay really close attention. And some tried. They tried to speak English. You know, they gave it their best, and I was really.
So it was English, but in deep accented tones of English.
Deep accents, and you know, one thing that I learned going to school there was that they also have a different education system there, and I found that to be unique because, you know, we have, you know, in the States we have different stereotypes of quote unquote Asian people, right?
Yes.
You know, I think sometimes it's good to explore and ask yourself why certain things are certain ways, right? Why are whenever the stats come out, why are the Asian students very well in math, right? Or the sciences, perhaps, or math that I know of. It's not stereotyping. To me, it's more so like being curious, like, why is that the case? For me, one of the hypotheses I came up with living in China, going to school over there, learn how the students operated, were that the school system was very application based. They taught the students how to apply different methods. So it was not a critical thinking based education system. It was not an education system that would give you a problem like, okay, how would you solve world hunger? It was more so, how would you what is 1+1? That would be application based. And so the students really did well in those types of areas. And I thought back to my education upbringing in the States, where it was more so, let's think about stuff abstract. So I found myself, struggling in the maths and the economics of the world per se, as opposed to this.
Yeah, because you're coming from Hobart, which is a liberal arts school, so they're teaching you more about how to think about things rather than what the answer is,
like how to solve it. I'm having to read pages and pages of books, as opposed to, the classroom structure there. So I found that to be interesting. But like, my semester there was great. For one, I got involved with sports there. I also got involved with volunteer opportunity, working for a lawyer while I was there, with an organization called Helpers for Domestic Workers.
Oh, wow.
That basically helped out the immigrants in that country that, for lack of better words, were getting the short end of law, or from the domestic employers who would at times abuse them, or take their passports away and things of that nature. And that was a great eye opener for me to see the other side of Hong Kong. And also got a chance to travel to different places like Singapore, Malaysia, Macau, which is bigger than Vegas. Going to mainland China.
Those had to be life-changing experiences as well, I imagine.
That was it was. I never heard of Macau. In my 20 years of living at that point, I couldn't believe that I had never heard of Macau, and I knew all about Vegas, but Macau generated more money than Vegas in a given year. So it was a big eye opener for me, and for me, it helped me understand Chinese people and Chinese culture. It helped me gain a better appreciation for it. It helped me extend my relationship beyond Chinese food and kung fu movies.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. So let's go. Yeah. Let's take a beat on the Chinese food for a moment. What is your opinion of American Chinese food after actually having experienced the real thing in China?
What we eat here is not Chinese food. It's just commercialized food.
That's what I've heard.
It's not. Whatever we're eating, I don't know what it is, but I haven't really ate much Chinese food since I came back in 2008.
Interesting.
It's because I know what they eat over there. I know what they're giving us here is what we want to eat.
What is your favorite dish that you had over there, and is there any place that you've gone in the States that actually does a good job of replicating mainland, Hong Kong or mainland China food?
One meal that I'll never forget, and I still salivate thinking about this, is when I went to Singapore. And Singapore is really unique, right? Singapore is a country that consists of 4 major groups: the Chinese from the mainland, Indians from India per se, the Malays, and then mix here and there. I went to this restaurant that served curry.
Okay.
Curry chicken and rice, and I love spicy food. To this day, I still salivate thinking about that curry I had in Singapore. It was so good and spicy. It was so good. It was just like at this corner spot that doesn't even look presentable per se, but the food was heaven. So if I ever go to when I get a chance to go back to Singapore, I'm going right back to that spot. I want to find that spot and order food.
I like how you switch from if I ever to when I go back.
Yeah. So I mean, the food in Hong Kong, I don't quite remember, but it wasn't bad. It was great. It was great food. It was just the typical, rice with. I don't remember any traditional food off the top of my head, but It was no different from what we eat here in terms of like the meat ingredients, rice and more rice and meat. It just made it your way.
Just probably a little bit fresher and a lot less gluten. What is
Yeah, in their own way. But they what I loved about their culture there is that their way of eating, their way of dining is more so in a family style.
Right.
So most restaurants you go to would give you, entrees for family. So you're never ordering for yourself. So, immediately it taught me, about group economics and just like how they valued family, how they value interaction with friends. As opposed to in the US, you go to a restaurant, you order for yourself.
I wonder if that's changing now, because you hear about things like Singles Day in China being so huge, like crazy amount of money being spent. I wonder what that dynamic is now.
I can see that because, another thing that I learned being over there is that the best export that the U.S. has is our export of culture. That's the best thing that the U.S. has over every other country. Because I remember my perception of the U.S. before I came from Ghana to here, right? I found that the Chinese had those same perceptions that I had when I was in Ghana. The way, and that's why media is so important, right? That's why all these Chinese folks were so intrigued at seeing me walking there, because they had seen or they have heard of the black man, right? But may had not laid eyes on the black man or have interacted with a black man. And so they were quite interested in finding out who I was, how I interacted, and they came to find out that I was no different from them, right? But those were images that come from the US. So even like in China, one of the things that I found very interesting is that at some points I would see people with umbrellas, right? They would have umbrellas when it's very sunny. And at first I thought it was their culture. I thought it was cultural for them. But at some time, I came to learn that it was because they didn't want to get darker. I came to learn that they didn't want to get darker because in their society, the lighter skin you are, the more pointy your nose.
Racism is definitely not a uniquely American thing, for sure.
Yeah, but in the context of China, the racism in China is different. And I don't even know if I should call it racism in China. It's different from.
Yeah, well, it's because you see it in Latin culture too, and again, maybe it is an export of Western society. I don't know how deep it goes back. I don't know the historical roots of it, but lighter is brighter. Bettering the race.
Yeah.
All the pieces that go to it. I think in China in particular, you have that. Indigenous peoples are darker. They're more, if you're whiter, you're more affluent, sort of dynamic going on. So they don't want to be dark because then they might be construed as whatever their version of Indian or indigenous is. I think that's a big aspect of it. But you see that in Latin American culture as well.
Yeah, and like you hit it right on the nail. And as a young person, that really took me back a little bit because it made me understand that the world in itself, we are so interconnected.
Yeah,
we are so interconnected in so many different ways, and the image that we project from here to there, the media in itself is just a very critical piece, and so that's why the rise of social media, I'm all for it because we can all tell our narratives. We can all push a certain narrative. We can all be a global village and be part of the discourse because for so long, the conversation was coming from bigger media outlets with agendas to push certain narratives,
No, it's nice. We're getting to see more of ourselves out there in good ways and bad ways, right?
Yeah.
I want to push this along here. So you're getting towards the end of your study abroad program. It's time to get on that long flight back.
Right.
Were you looking forward to returning to Hobart?
Yes, because now you have to remember. Now this is my fall junior year, and returning, I'll be coming to my spring junior year, and before you know it, I'll be a senior.
Yes.
So there was a lot of anxiety because I was thinking, and I think the coach at Hobart at the time was whatever internship you likely have at your summer junior year will likely be the job offer that you have
Okay.
after you graduate, right? And so I even while I was in China was thinking about internships for the summer, for the summer junior year, going into my senior year. And at that time too, we were going through that thing called the global financial crisis, right? And so job prospects and internship prospects were hard to come by. Students, not just me, was scrambling. I was and then on top of that too, I didn't quite sure know what I wanted to get into after school. And so I was eager to come back, but I also knew that I needed to come back with a plan and work towards that plan.
That's awesome. So you get back to Hobart. Now you're in junior year. You're worrying about internships. So walk us through junior year and into senior year as you're thinking about real world approaching, and talk to us about how the opportunities start lining up, or how you start building opportunity for yourself.
Yeah. So Hobart William Smith has this program called the Pathway program. And it's a program where from your freshman year to your senior year, they basically walk you through a process of identifying what you want to do post-grad and how to get into that industry. So I was enrolled in that program and going through the necessary, counseling or meetings and networking with alumni. And so for me, coming back from China, I was able to secure a couple meetings with alums who had connections to a company called Initiative Media. Initiative Media is the number 2 advertising agency under the Interpublic group of companies. I interviewed with a couple people from Hobart and got an internship for that summer at Initiative Media to be an assistant buyer the summer of my junior year going to my senior year. It was a wonderful internship opportunity because it really taught me the world of media and marketing. It really taught me the different side of ad buying. A business that you normally don't think about when you think about business. And I eventually ended up getting an offer from them some point down the line after school. So my summer was taken care of. Going into my senior year, I had run as class president, and I was very fortunate to be a Hobart class president. I'm not sure if I was the first Black student to be, but it was certainly a position to envy, and a position with a lot of responsibilities. And so I think my major focus going into my senior year was making sure that I was, doing well academically, making sure that I was working towards the different internships or job prospect opportunities with the Pathway program, and also being a good student representative as a senior class president. That my senior year was quite lined up for me with activities and things to do.
That's crazy. So what were some of the responsibilities that you had as president of the class?
The biggest responsibility was that you were managing the class budget, right? The class budget. I don't. It's been 10 years. I don't quite remember, but it was at least $100,000 or more, for student activity, right?
That's
for
crazy.
your senior year activity, for whether it's a potluck or a pig roast, or us going on a wine tours around the Finger Lakes area, or for us having different activities to support senior year. Because quite frankly, your spring senior year, unless you have some like major classes to take, that is a semester of having a lot of fun, right? So that spring senior year, that budget was for that spring, right? So the responsibility was maintaining that budget, allocating towards the right resources, and making sure that I responded to the need of my class at the time. And I think me and my co-president was able to do that successfully. Because if you remember, Hobart William Smith, this William Smith, which is a women college, so they had their president, and I was the president for Hobart College. So
yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was thinking about that as we were getting into talking about Hobart and William Smith colleges, because that's something that I think, when you go on to U.S. World News Report and whatnot, it's not necessarily that's something that's self-evident because the names are smack dab together, but it is colleges. Yeah. All right, so now you're graduating. I forget where LeBron is in his career, but you're jumping into the real world.
I'll tell you where LeBron was at that time.
I knew you would. That's why I brought it up. So I'll let you talk to me about your thing with LeBron, and then talk to me about what you were thinking as you were graduating Hobart, and now did you already have the job lined up, and what was happening next?
Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, at the time that I was graduating in summer 2010, it was really tough for most graduates because we were going through that financial crisis in the company. We were going through that financial recession. So job opportunities were very scarce for a lot of students, including me. I didn't get an offer from Initiative after my summer junior year. And so I focused a lot on interviewing with different companies. Unum comes to mind, PepsiCo comes to mind. Another thing that I was really interested in at the time was the foreign service, because I had gone to South Korea through another study abroad short excursion the spring of my senior year, and came to learn about the foreign service. And so I was looking at that as well too. And so I was looking at a lot of things, but at the same time, the opportunities were not coming. So I graduated really without a job, right? I graduated not having an offer. I interviewed with PepsiCo. They sent me a nice rejection letter. Interviewed with Unum. I didn't hear back from them. And I was either left with coming back home to the Bronx with no job, going to Hobart William Smith. It's quite depressing, right? Achieving these stuff like student class president, studying abroad, and coming back home with no job. It just wasn't really something that I wanted to face. Or making the best out of the opportunity in the situation at the time and saying, look, you yourself, you don't quite know what you want to do or what you want to get in. So why don't you take advantage of one of these programs or connections that Hobart has and go and teach abroad for a time and come back? Maybe by the time you come back, the job prospects will be a lot, better. Wow. And so I did that and went to Costa Rica for a couple of months and did some service and teaching abroad there before coming back and finally starting my career in the Senate.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How was the Costa Rica experience?
Oh, probably the best decision I made after school, because, a lot of times, people, especially for people who don't get a chance to travel while you're in school, after school, I didn't have any major responsibilities, right? I didn't have a kid, I didn't have bills to pay. And I was yearning for, the China bug had bit me. So I was quite interested in abroad. I had gone to South Korea at this time. And I'm like, okay, now the only place to explore is Latin America. Growing up in Washington Heights and Harlem with all the Dominican kids that I grew up with, it just really made sense for me to go to a country where it's, mostly Hispanics and learn a little bit more about that culture and also volunteer my time. And so I applied to this program called Rustic Pathways, which was a mix of a tourist company with volunteerism. And so tour guides like me would take high school students from the US in a tour around the country, depending on what kind of project you wanted to do. At the same time, I got a chance to teach the locals that I lived in, teach them English or volunteer in different capacity. So I lived in this community in Costa Rica called the Bribri Villages. Quite interesting. The Bribri Villages is a community that didn't speak Spanish because they were indigenous to Costa Rica. but they were from Puerto Viejo and other communities that were Spanish speaking. So I got a chance to really learn the landscape of Costa Rica, learn their history, got a chance to go to Panama, really live a life of consequence, at that young age, and really come back and say, okay, I've had all these traveling experience, China, Hong Kong, South Korea, now Costa Rica and Panama. I think I'm ready for the corporate world, right? I'm not going to have any regrets when I'm in a corporate world thinking, maybe I should have traveled abroad, or maybe this age,
Very cool. So now you're back home. Did you already have a job lined up at that point, or now were you going out and applying?
Yep. So now I'm back home. I connected with my mentor, who's still my mentor to this day. His name is Mr. Harrington.
From Hobart?
From Hobart.
Okay.
I met him at Hobart because his daughter went to Hobart, and we connected there, and we built a friendship. And to this date, I don't make any major decisions in my life, career-wise and even life-wise, without either getting his opinion or consulting him on it. So
what's his name again?
Mr. Harrington. You probably said
I met him at the wedding. Yes.
Yeah. So I called Mr. Harrington and basically let him know, hey, Mr. Harrington, I'm back from Costa Rica. I'm really looking to get into the work field. I can either, at the time I had like different opportunities. I could go to Initiative. I had an offer from Initiative Media. Remember, I had interest in Initiative.
Right.
Or I can try my hand in politics because I had met my state senator in my community, and I had asked him for my opportunity to work under him.
What was the senator's name?
His name was Senator Pedro Espada.
Pedro Espada. Okay.
Yeah, if you Google him, it's not going to be a good thing, but that was his name.
All right.
So we talked about. I
don't know anything. Did he get into some scandals at some point or something?
Yeah. So long story short, he ended up spending 5 years for
campaign or
some kind of vote fraud, some kind of fraud, embezzlement. Something to do with like misappropriation of funds.
Gotcha.
Him and his son. So. That, but at the time that I worked for him, it was a different situation. My capacity was as a community outreach specialist, and I didn't really work under him. I worked for a wonderful lady called Marzetta Harris and Sean Rosenberg.
Well, I think many people could probably share in the experience of working with a company, organization, politician, somewhere where you were happy to have the job, and then later found out that somebody was doing something they shouldn't do. It's part of life and part of reality. Which
something different.
Which is why, if you're at a good school, at some point they're teaching ethics and those sort of things, because you try to steer clear of those situations whenever possible. But sometimes you just don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
You don't know. You have. I certainly didn't have access to the funds, but I think the biggest learning experience I took from that was that, as a young man, 22, out of college, working for a state senator, was a big deal, and it was a great introduction to the world of politics, because I was really interested in politics at the time. But it taught me the value of having a skill. It taught me that if I ever wanted to be in politics, being in politics at such a young age was not the best route, right? Because for me at the time, it taught me that I'll become dependent, some way, shape, or form, dependent on that. That would be my only skill, right? That would be the only thing I'm bringing to the table. If I'm not elected to a position, or if I'm not working for a politician, I'm finding a way to stay alive in that.
That sounds like elder advice right there, Innis.
Yeah.
Your advice.
Yeah.
I think about politics frequently. Are you ever thinking about jumping back into politics?
I would love to. I would definitely love to have, after my career at EY and consulting, which, I think my long-term goal is not within that space. I would love to be involved in some capacity, but for me, I would love to be in that capacity not as a senator, but more so provide in the capacity to provide meaningful change, and my passion, for service is something that I would like to explore. I just really haven't found the avenue to really dive into that.
I know we share that same value of wanting to create change and positive change, and understanding that things aren't all as they should be, and wanting to create difference there. So I know I think about politics, and I also think about that thing of it at least for me, to jump into politics in a way where you're dependent upon the salary that comes from politics isn't necessary.
It's just not. It's not healthy. I would want to be. I love your track. I love the fact that you're a businessman, and I want to be at that level at some point. I love the fact that you are independent.
I love how you think my level is somehow higher than yours. I appreciate that.
No, I mean that flexibility you have, like your failure and success depends on you, right? And you are working for yourself. You have other people working for you, and I think that all young people should strive to be business people. They should strive to be entrepreneurs, not self-employed, but entrepreneurs. And so I think that's the path that I'm working towards. I want to get to a certain level where I can make that leap of faith, that jump, but I'm not there yet, and I know I'm not. But I just don't. I don't want to have that mindset be predominant in my mind. Never ever make that jump either.
Well, I think one of the things that people sort of build up in their minds with entrepreneurship is that you somehow have to make some great leap or have it all figured out. And one of the things that's really important, and I'm trying to instill in my kids, and this is something that I'm hoping with your 9-month-old as they come into the world and they see you and your wife, that you're of your own understanding, and for your child, teaching that entrepreneurial skill set from a young age, because I think your understanding now is a lot different than what your parents might have been. But that understanding that you don't have to be 18, you don't have to be 22 in order for you to be a business person.
Right.
You can start at 6, you can start at 10, and getting that financial education, which you're in that financial world, and understanding that, you can start saving very early. And then suddenly, when you are saving money, when you start babysitting, I have this going on with my daughter. She's saving 50% of her paycheck, and she is going to be an investor.
Wow.
Right? She's going to be an investor far before I ever even thought about anything close to that, right? Anything beyond, I might have thought, I want to be P. Diddy. I want to be, this or that. She's going to have that ability to actually play with her own finance and make investments and do things in a way that I never had the opportunity to, never thought about it. And when we give that to our children, that idea of just saving money, period. Forget about investing, forget about anything aside from that. If I had saved 50% of my paycheck from when I was 16 on, how wealthy would I be right now?
Man, that you've said something real deep, because I'll give you this example. A couple years ago, because of my knowledge of stocks, the little knowledge that I have of stocks, I wanted to instill the same principles in my younger brothers, right? So I called the youngest and I'm like, hey, let me create a Vanguard account for you so you can trade. Let me create a brokerage account for you so you can invest. At the time, he had $1,000 in savings. And, I did the math on Amazon, and I told him, hey, listen, if you keep this money in your bank account at Chase, you're not going to get anything at the end of the year. But if you buy a stock of Amazon. And at the time, Amazon was around $950 for a share, and he had only 1,000. So he trusted me with his money, and I bought one share of Amazon stock for him. And he doesn't know much about stocks. He doesn't really know exactly how it works. So time goes by, maybe a couple months later.
And you're saying that to me, and I'm thinking about this, and obviously hindsight is 2020. But for me, I'm like, if I have $1,000, and to go and put it all
one
stock. So let me say this: one, you're a visionary. Two, I don't know that I would have done that. As much you know. I know you. I was like, wait,
no,
one stock, but the end all story of that, I want you to take that story, because I wouldn't advise somebody to take all of their money and put it in one stock. I mean, common thing in the industry is diversification. You did the equivalent of like, we're gonna put all of your money on
Amazon. Because I'm looking at him like, okay, it's $1,000. You're not doing anything with your life besides going to school. Amazon, for just the simple analysis that I know with doing stocks, like I'm no stock guru. I just know how to do the simple stuff, right?
Yeah.
It looks like it's going to appreciate in a certain amount of time. And I bought it for him. And so from 950, it went up from 950 to 1,000. And with a couple of weeks, it came back down to 950, and then it went out to 900. And being young, both him and I being young in stock trading and things of that nature, he panicked. He called me one day and said, "Oh, I just saw my money went down. It's now around 900, like around 850 at the time. And this is this kid's entire money, $1,000. And I took it, invested 950 on one share, and now the stock is at 850 or something like that. And so I panicked with him, even though I was investing myself. You know, I waited we waited for the stock to come back up to 950. It came back up to 950. I took it out for him. And I gave him back his 950. And I think he closed the account with Vanguard at some point, or he probably still has it. Who knows?
Did you keep your money invested in Amazon?
My money is still not. My money's invested in Facebook. That's a different story. But as we speak right now, Amazon stock is at 2,000. The last time I checked, it was around 2,500. I didn't even know it went up to 2,800.
So it's an interesting story. So I started investing into 2017 and using the Robinhood app, which I really recommend to anybody that's getting started investing.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No fees, or at least no fees on. Yes, indeed, he's got it on there. So, you know, we get into pandemic, stocks are falling, but I've been listening to Warren Buffett and the like. Did not touch my accounts. Matter of fact, even with the little money I had, I made a couple of purchases when things were down. It's since gone past. So yeah, that thing. But I gotta say, I did not have all of my money in one stock.
Hey, he would have definitely had.
He would have done well. He would have done very, very well.
2,800 minus 2,800. 2,800, right?
Almost 300% increase on his.
Yeah, definitely at least 1,800. So when COVID started, I lost most of my money because I invest also in Stash. You ever heard of Stash?
No.
So Stash is mainly for mutual funds.
Okay.
So I had at least $2,000 gain in my portfolio in Stash. COVID hit. I lost all $2,000 minus another $500.
Did you panic and take your money out again?
My wife did. She took, because I had her create an account, right? I had her create an account for herself. Like, hey, listen, have your own account. I'm like,
how did that work out?
She saw all her money being lost, and so she broke even, not even knowing that she didn't have to pay taxes on the gains that she's made, like for some years. Either way, I left my money in there. Now I'm at 1,700. So my money my money's back up at 1,700 in terms of the gain, how much I've gained from that account. So COVID didn't really scare me from like dumping my stocks or my.
Well, and this is the thing for investing, which I'm hoping you're on the same page with, because you're a financial guy. So I hope this makes sense. But if you're going to invest, you want to invest long term. You want to put it in and you want to forget about it. You want to invest in a solid company. You want to do a little bit of research, do a little bit of homework, make sure it's a solid investment, make sure it's not a fly-by-night company. One of the things that I did that I sort of regret doing now, and it's sort of a riskier investment. So there's a company called what's the name of it? It's Moderna. So Moderna came out in the middle of a pandemic that they supposedly have a vaccine for COVID. So they popped up. Now, the thing about Moderna is it's incredibly risky because they've never actually sold a product. They have no products on the market. So
they've been approved by the FDA?
They have no products on the market, none, zero. But it was rumored that they have a vaccine in works and could come to market with a vaccine. So it's one of those things that it's a very risky investment. And this is something that, you have to be comfortable. And if you ever work with a financial planner, it's what's your level of risk? Are you going to invest in something that's risky or not? Heavy risk can be heavy reward sometimes, but there are things that are more sure, like blue chip stocks like Amazon and the sort that seem very much like they're going to increase in money. But if you want to come into the market, if you want to buy a stock of Amazon right now, you got to pony up $2,800 just to get an Amazon.
My philosophy when it comes to investing is that I never invest money that I can't lose.
Exactly. There you go. And that's your risk level. So if you're comfortable losing the money, if you're comfortable putting your money down on the casino table, then you can do it. Now, there's certain things that you'll hear in the market, or certain things that you'll hear about the market, that the stock market, over the life of the stock market has always gone up. It will go down, but it always goes up. That doesn't not mean that every stock always goes up.
Right.
A stock can fall to zero. So you have to be careful, because if you invest your money in a certain stock, which was the fear when your brother pulled his money out of Amazon, because there is that risk that something bad happens to the company, some bad actor, some bad apple, some crazy thing, and that stock can potentially fall to zero, losing all of your $2,800 investment in Amazon. Now, most companies, especially once they're at a certain level, aren't going to do that. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. I do want to take advantage of your financial knowledge if there's anything you want to share, but then I want to get into a little bit of your Deloitte experience and what you're doing at Ernst Young, and get into how people can get in touch with you, and how you want to connect with people, because we are at the 2-hour point, probably a record for the Alumni Connections project.
Sorry about that.
I love the conversation. I'm sure there's going to be people that rock out and enjoy this.
No, sorry about that. But I mean, one last, I guess, I always recommend things that I use when it comes to like personal financing. So we already talked about Robinhood, right? I also have Robinhood. There's a couple of devices that I use that I recommend to anyone who's interested. So I always recommend Robinhood if you're interested in learning about stocks, but you don't really know much about it. You can use Robinhood as a platform to learn. Another platform that I talked about is the Stash platform. Can you see that, Cameron?
A little bit. I'll look up the website and drop it into the comments.
Yeah. So Stash is another app, but Stash mainly invest in like mutual funds and blue chip companies. It's a lot safer. You're not investing in one stock, right? And then the last one that I recommend to any household is Acorn. Have you heard of Acorn?
I've heard of it. I haven't used it.
Yeah, so Acorn is basically the piggy bank of investing. is literally the piggy bank of investing. So let's say you go shopping and you buy a fruit and it costs $1.75. They will round it up to $2 and take 25 cents to your Acorn account.
Got it.
Yeah, so it's a small way of investing, but before you know it, the 25 cents here and there, by the end of the year, you probably have $200, $300 in your in your Acorn account. In 2 to 3 years, 5 years, you probably have $5,000 of spare change. Who knows? In 10 years, you probably have $25,000. That $25,000 can be a down payment on a house, or it can be you can buy maybe more stocks of it, or you can invest in the business you want with it. So those are like the small, tiny ways that people can utilize to make money here and there without even knowing it. So I just wanted to recommend that to you.
That savings piece is so big for anyone that's young, for anyone that's old. If you're not saving, save. That is the only true way to accumulate wealth.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm doing that. But I mean, aside from my knowledge of stocks and investing is beginner level, or it's not even at a expertise level, because that's not what I do at EY, or that's not what I was.
So talk to us real quick about what you do at EY, and maybe you shed a little bit of light on your experience at Deloitte. But I want you to speak on that, and then as you're wrapping that up, I want you to tell people how they should get in touch with you, how they should connect with you, and how you would love to help people, and how somebody could potentially help you.
Okay. So when I started my career in consulting at Deloitte, I got into what we called at the time, financial services, working primarily for Fortune 500 companies, doing different types of projects for these companies, all around either their business process or around their operations, around understanding their books, around understanding the risk that they had to take in order to make sure that they were making funds, right? So I'll give you a couple of examples, and project to project can be different. At one point at Deloitte, I literally traveled to at least 25 different states within a span of 3 months. Why? Because USPS Finance, which is the wing of our United States Postal Service, had contracted Deloitte to come into the organization or to the company, which is quasi-governmental company, to reshape the entire department to help them find ways to recognize revenue. Right? So what does that mean? It would mean that me, along with other Deloitte professionals and other consulting professionals, will take a bottom-up approach, assess the entire book of business that USPS has, look at the risk appetite that the company have, analyze it, and then provide advice or solutions to either mitigating those risks or either taking advantage of opportunities that are there for them. Right? So my career at Deloitte, I spent in different areas. My career at Deloitte, we spent in different areas. So for one, when I started, I was part of a project that helped with the largest bankruptcy in U.S. history. You want to take a guess what that is, Cameron?
Was that Enron?
That was Lehman Brothers.
Oh, Lehman Brothers. I should have guessed Lehman Brothers. Yeah.
Yeah. So I spent 1.5 years working on Lehman Brothers, which was basically helping all the investors, all the Class A and Class B investors that had lost millions of dollars with Lehman Brothers, either recouping a certain percentage of their money back or helping them file against the U.S. to essentially get their money. So that's when I got my ABCs of investing. That's when I started to understand exactly how stock works, because in order for me to be part of the team to help with those bankruptcy case, we have to understand what the price of the stock was at the time of the bankruptcy of your portfolio. You have to understand exactly what stock you're investing in. You have to understand the business of the company. We have to present a case that Cameron Tooth lost $2 million with Lehman Brothers and should be compensated $2.5 million because at the time that he lost $2 million, at this time, by inflation and other factors, you are owed $2.5 million, right? So I spent a year and a half working on that case, and then afterwards, got a chance to work. Wrote onto another project with a company called Morgan Stanley, which has three main services they provide: wealth management, asset management, and operations for their clients, right? And it all boils down to money, money management. So, with that too, I wasn't necessarily on the front line of the business. I was more so in the back line of the business. You have to learn how Morgan Stanley made money from their clients. You have to understand the technologies they put in place to make sure their business runs. You have to understand what they call business process and controls. If Cameron does X, the company is supposed to generate X in income, right? Well, they called us there because, one, the government requires them because of what was this company's name? Because of the company that went bankrupt in 2001. Enron's. Yeah, because of Enron's, the company had put different laws in place, and the law they put in place at the time was called Sarbanes-Oxley, SOX. Yeah. So, a lot of these financial companies had to be SOX compliant, right? So Morgan Stanley brought my company there to help them with their SOX assessment, because external auditors will come and look at their books. And so we came there to help them be SOX ready. Also, we helped them with their business process to make sure that it was, put in place. So those, the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy filing, Morgan Stanley, which was more so SOX readiness. From Morgan Stanley, I worked for that 2 years span for USPS, traveling around the country, looking at the operation of the United States Postal Service, seeing how they could recognize revenue in different areas, seeing how they can recoup those revenues, seeing how they can implement better hiring policies and hiring, different people for different positions, doing all these different types of financial and assessments to provide to the management so they can implement it. So in a nutshell, consulting for me, or in my career, has really been just working with the stakeholders, companies, investors, and other companies in place to ensure that the companies were either realizing funds, were either staying compliant with the federal regulation, or either looking for areas to improve. So those are just a few examples of companies that I've worked for being in consulting.
That's amazing. So talk to us about Ernst Young, and then follow that up with how people can get in touch with you and how you can help folks, and how folks could help you.
Yeah. So the magic, or like the interest, why consulting is interesting, or what's interesting for me, is that it gives you an opportunity to learn in different industries, right? So primarily at Deloitte, I was within the financial services industry. So within that financial service industry, I got to work for different companies, Morgan Stanley, as I mentioned, wealth management, private equity, Lehman Brothers, which is bankruptcy, company like USPS, which is more so a commercial company, but at the same time, it has a financial aspect to it. And then later on for like airline companies like HEICO, which made products, and you have to understand the products. So after 4 to 5 years of working within the financial services space, I had an appreciation for it, but I also wanted to have a change. So that's what drew me outside of Deloitte, because I started looking into the corporate real estate aspect of things and became more attracted to corporate real estate and wanted to seek opportunities outside of the Big Four. So I started looking for different jobs and different companies to work for. I didn't want to get back to the Big Four, but I got an opportunity to interview for a smaller group within Ernst Young, which primarily focused on providing services for companies that invested in real estate and invested in real estate investment trusts, which are called REITs. And I've been there for 2 years, mainly managing 2 big accounts. One for a client called Paramount Group, which has about 20 properties around the United States, 1633 being one of them, where we serve as the internal auditors for them. And we also serve as the advisors to management, looking at the operations, looking at the HR operation, looking at the leasing operations, looking at their just serving as the main advisor for the company, regulators preparedness for them, because the regulator is or the external auditors is Deloitte, and just being at EY has really got me deep exposure to real estate, that if I'd ever decide to leave the real estate space, I can really work for a construction company, or I can work for a corporate company that invests in real estate, or I can work for, if I have the capital, I can start my own, right? And engage in, the private section as well too. So yeah.
That's amazing. I definitely want to get into the equity capital space. So we got to talk around those lines, because that's, I think, a major opportunity. How can folks get in touch with you, Innis? What do you feel like you can help fellow alumni with?
Yeah. So I've in the past, I used to have a really good success at helping people navigate the process of interviewing with these companies. I certainly don't have the plug. I used to have the plug for Deloitte, but I'm no longer at Deloitte, and the plug at Deloitte that I had is no longer there either. But I've been through the rigors of the interview process.
For anyone uninitiated, a plug is somebody that's basically an in, right?
Plug is someone who can get you in there. It's extremely difficult for whatever reason. I don't really know. I don't think I got in there because I'm extra, it's just by grace. I got in there because experience and the right connections. But it's really difficult to get into the Deloittes and the EYs of the world, because they look for certain people of different backgrounds. And they look for.
I saw this the other day too, Innis. You got to update your LinkedIn, because you still got Deloitte in here, so we got to get that updated. But this is Innis on LinkedIn. You can find Innis Baah, so you can just search on LinkedIn and contact him. What's another way that somebody could get in touch with you, Innis?
Quite Facebook me. I'm on Facebook. Just send me a messenger and I'll respond to it. I'm very approachable. I'm very easy to go. If you ever have any interview, whether it is with Deloitte or EY or any other company, I'll be more than happy to take 15 to 20 minutes out of my time to talk you through a behavioral interview example. As a matter of fact, we held those at Deloitte for a number of years, where we took high school kids and took them through examples, have professionals give them like mock interviews for a number of years. This is before I connected Mr. Thompson to Deloitte. And now, Mr. Thompson has a good relationship with Deloitte. So I'm hoping that my time at EY, I'll be able to connect with someone within the corporate social responsibility wing. But I haven't been able to crack that yet.
And I think, it's one of those things that, we always talk about this as well, just understanding the culture better. I remember going in for a job interview at a event company, and I knew somebody there, and I just didn't know the right questions to ask. But, I should have asked more questions or paid more attention to the culture. I was in the interview, and I'm as you can see, I don't have the jacket on right now, but, in that day, I had not only the jacket, but I had the vest. So I had the 3-piece suit on, and the president of the company comes by the interview where I'm getting interviewed by, I don't even remember the name of the lady, but I remember this moment. The president comes by the office, says, peeks in. So he just kind of sees it. He's overdressed and bounces.
What?
So, it's really key, for somebody that is trying to get into Deloitte, trying to get into Ernst Young, understanding the culture, understanding the way you need to be when you do that interview, what should be on your resume, what should be in your spiel about what you're talking about. So it's really valuable to talk to somebody like Innis, who's been there, been in the culture, understands the folks and the players that are in the game. Even if you don't necessarily have a plug, you got a whole lot of insight there. What are you looking for? How can alumni help you? What's something that you're looking for?
That's deep, Cameron. I haven't really thought about that per se. For me, just like with you, I always love connecting with people, because I just never know who you're going to come in contact with. You just never know how someone else can benefit from the relationships that you have.
So let me ask the question again. So should somebody who is an alumni of A. Philip Randolph campus, maybe an alumni of Hobart that maybe hasn't been previously connected to you before, somebody that's gone through the SBI program that is seeing this now, should they reach out to you?
Definitely.
You heard it here. Innis gave you permission. Get in contact with them.
Definitely.
I'm gonna let you get the last word in here, Innis. What does the future hold? And after you say that, I'd like you to say goodbye to everybody, and I'll play the theme song and play us out of here.
Oh man, I mean, first and foremost, Cameron, thank you so much for taking the time out your busy schedule to host me on your show.
Man, it's all my pleasure, man.
It's been seamless. I didn't even think that I didn't even know we went over 2 hours until I looked at the time. But I guess my last words is that relationships are always key, right? No matter the industry you're in, no matter what you want to do, relationships are always key. Point in case, Cameron and I have had a good relationship since I was in high school. And over time, I think my relationship with you has graduated to different levels, right? So in the beginning, it was more so, Cameron, I need your help with X, Y, and Z for school, right? Over time in school, it was more so, Cameron, I am at Hobart, and so you should look into sending more people, to have interest in the school, right? And that resulted in a number of people coming from Randolph to Hobart. So that was the benefit of that relationship. Over time, it was more so, we need you, Innis, we need you to come and talk to these students at SBI so they can have a perspective about the kind of school that you went to. That's the relationship that we had. And now my relationship with you is more so as you being a senior entrepreneur and a senior father. I'm pretty sure that
senior one more time.
Experience.
I'm not that much older than you.
Experience. I can always reach out to you for business advice. I can reach out to you for parental advice if it comes to it, right?
Listen. We got a lot to talk about on that. But I could probably help you a lot more on that than on the entrepreneurial.
So much more. But the key there is relationship, right? And one thing that I learned in college is that, and even throughout college, is that we are always taught to network with other people, right? What I always say is network with a purpose. So if I ever go into a crowd of 100 people, I'm never looking to get to know 100 people. I'm always looking to make a meaningful relationship or meaningful contact with at least one, at most 2 or 3 people. Because then I know that will be genuine. I know that I'll be able to follow up with people. I know that I'll be able to have, converse with you every now and then. And so relationships, no matter the industry you're in, no matter what you want to do, are always key. Foster them just like how you would foster any other relationship in your personal life. And so that's what I'll leave you with, Cameron.
It's amazing. Sage words, man. This has been Alumni Connections. I'm going to play the theme song, get into it. We're going to rock out Randolph. There we go.
Are we singing it? Are we singing it?
Do you know all the words?
I don't know. I know the chat.
Hang out for a second, Innis.
This is the Alumni Connections Project. We all know Randolph is better than the rest. Even when you progress, you still gotta rep. 8 Philip Randolph Campus High School. But this is not a test. You should say it with your chest. Be proud of your origin. And if you are proud, support it then. Stronger together through unity. Better together. Let's build the community. Randolph isn't a school or a building. It's a legacy. It's not in your past. It's your identity. So show some pride. Alumni Connection sponsored and brought to you by SBI, CCPI, SoundDownBusiness.org, SoundDownBusiness.org. The journey doesn't end with graduation and prom. The journey doesn't end with graduation and prom. The journey doesn't end with the journey doesn't end. This is the Alumni Connections Project. This is the Alumni Connections Project. 8 Philip Randolph, 8 Philip Randolph, Randolph.